times.
Love that. Love that.
All right. 2 seconds.
What's going on, man?
All right, cool.
Dude, how was your Perform Better talk?
Money. Knocked it out. So I think it went really well. I got a lot of positive feedback from it, so I think it went really well. I was pretty psyched about it.
Awesome, dude.
Can you guys hear me
That's
okay?
great. I wish you...
Can you hear me all right?
I hear you fine.
Okay, cool. My headphones are kind of like broken. I don't know if you can see. Summer.
Ghetto together there. All right, we'll get started. Thanks for hopping on a call too, Marco.
Of course. No problem.
If you could just go ahead and I think most of us know you, but just introduce yourself, kind of tell a little bit about yourself before we even get started.
Okay, cool. So I am a strength and conditioning coach here at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning. I have been here since 2009. In my time here, I've coached just about everyone and anyone you can imagine, from young kids to adults, general population, high school, college, professional athletes, Olympians. That was kind of my bread and butter for the first couple of years of being here. And then in 2013, I went back to massage therapy school, and then we sort of opened this massage and movement therapy clinic here inside the gym, Movement as Medicine, which I've been working for about 5 years now as the clinic director. Also coach for the CFSC. Been doing that since the company was started in September of 2014, I believe, and helped develop the curriculum for that, and teach for Perform Better a little bit, and also travel and do some contract work, whether it be for the NFL or the NHL, sort of some privately contracted work sometimes also.
Awesome. And you get to come down here in September too. You're not going to Colorado, are you, next month or the end of this?
No, but you know, I really, 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 really did not want to get on a plane for the summer. That was like one of my goals, to avoid airplanes June, July, and August. But it looks like I might have to go to Utah in the beginning of August to help Brendan do a level 2. If we can, I think we have like 15 signups or something right now, and if we get a handful more, it looks like I'll be coming out early August.
Yeah, we'll have to get a handful more. You broke your streak.
I know. So. I know. For a long time, I was like the running champion of Vasa, like CFSC master coach of Vasa. So, but it is like one of my favorite places, though. It's so funny because people are like, "Oh, it's so cool! Like you get to go here and there and this place," and I'm like, "Yeah." I go to Utah a lot too, and they're like, "Utah," and I'm like, "I love it there. Love it there." It's the people. It's the people, man. You guys could be anywhere; it wouldn't matter. I just like the people. So, Lane is an okay ski instructor, also. So,
hey, if you wore the right equipment, and Brendan's like going down the ski slope in gym apparel. Hey, Lane,
don't even start me.
I'll have you ask the question. Lane, if you're not going to crash a car now, go ahead and ask your question.
I'm good, yeah. I'm in the parking lot. Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, Marco. You know, I went to the Orlando Perform Better, so I missed you. Mm-hmm. But if I remember looking through the catalog and seeing your beautiful face, your talk was about variety without change, right?
Yeah, that's sort of what we titled it, yeah.
So,
go ahead.
I mean, I think the title probably talks a little bit to all love how to create that. But what new things have you learned on that topic?
So in actuality,
That cut out on me.
do you want to, can you ask the question again? Just because, in fact, you're still kind of frozen. I don't know if we can hear what you're saying, but your screen is definitely a bit frozen. There you go. Now you're moving. Quit moving around
Okay,
so much,
so
Lane.
yeah, tell us about variety without change. Tell us about variety without change, and just, what new things have you learned that we could really use to help our clients and help continue to do that, right? I think that's always the struggle as coaches, is to continue to add variety while still focusing on what really matters.
Yeah, my hands-on was sort of about how we need to sort of be steadfast with our principles and philosophies that we believe in, like the joint-by-joint approach, like the FMS. And we need to be steadfast in our approach to joint-friendly strength training. But what we need to do is try to find a way to, as I like to describe it, deliver people the same meal, but maybe just on a different plate, right? So what we need to do is continue to prioritize things like stabilizing the knee and mobilizing the ankle and all those sort of things, while allowing them some sort of variety, so it doesn't get stagnant, so it doesn't feel the same for them over and over and over again. Like, oh, we always do goblet split squats, or we always do inverted rows with TRX. So really what it was about was not so much like there were any new exercises in particular, because we have all the patterns and positions that we sort of believe in, that we have our strong philosophies about. But what it was more about was, how can we change volume and intensity? How can we change loading? How can we change different things within the exercise so that it feels different, right? And so really, although my my title of my presentation didn't mention it, what my whole thing was about really was about the lever bell, which is more commonly known as a steel mace, but Perform Better has sort of rebranded it as the lever bell. So obviously there's a lot of different branding philosophies out there, and Perform Better had this idea that they were going to rebrand the name, that way they could try to sell them under something different than the steel mace, which was fine. But I really kind of talked about the steel mace and its history. So for anybody who doesn't know, the steel mace is formerly known as a gada, like a G-A-D-A, and the gada was basically a heavy ball or stone on the end of a stick. And ancient Hindu warriors used to use it as a form of preparing for battle, because their weapons back then were typically, their close range weapons were clubs, right? It was a club or some sort of stick with a ball or a rock on the end of it. So what they discovered very early on is that if they took a tool, basic, principles of progression and overloading, if they took a tool like a stick and attached a heavier stone to the end of it, they could train with that. That would make them much more efficient when it actually came to battle. So what they would do is, for example, if they used anywhere from a 5 to 10 pound club, they would train themselves with a 15 or 20 pound club. And then what would happen is, when they would get to battle, they would be much more efficient. So over thousands of years, it's sort of progressed into becoming a form of exercise that we commonly know now as the steel mace. And what I really like about it, that my presentation was mainly focused on, was how you can do a couple things that we really, really like. One, you can deliver some sort of variety without changing your principles or your beliefs in terms of our joint-by-joint approach and FMS principles. You can also use a very low system load. So by using a tool like a steel mace, it allows you to work anywhere from 7 to 25 or 30 pounds and still create a very significant training effect without having to train somebody with something very, very heavy. Different ways that you can hold the steel mace, whether it's closer to the body, further to the body, closer to the top, closer to the bottom, spread grip, close grip, all impact the difficulty of the exercise. So it's really a neat tool that you can hand to 5 different people and say, hey, all 5 of you are holding a 10-pound steel mace or a 10-pound lever bell, and we can all increase or decrease the difficulty based on how we're going to hold it. So we don't really even have to change the load of the tool in the hands. to impact the exercise. So I think that's one of the things that's really, really nice about it. And so I kind of just went over some basic training, exercises that we all do, like CFSC basic principles, pushing and pulling, knee dominant, hip dominant, just using the steel mace or the lever bell. That way people could see how interesting and unique of a tool it is, similar to introducing a sandbag or introducing a kettlebell or introducing some sort of TRX trainer, just trying to deliver something different for people to try to digest and grasp, that could be fun and interesting for their clients to practice with.
Love that. That's awesome.
I mean, you could essentially do that with a sandbag too, right? It's just
you could do that with just about anything. But the fact of the matter is, the lever bell is a new tool for Perform Better. They wanted to try and promote them. They want to try to sell them. They want them to be popular. And so essentially Perform Better had asked me, hey, can you do your whole presentation with this tool? But we don't want to give away the tool in the name, right? So Lane, like you asked about the presentation, I could have done a million different things in that presentation. They asked me specifically to focus on using the lever bell for the hour and 15 minutes. So that's sort of what we did. And it was really, really cool. And if you guys have any or get any, before my next trip out there, I'll definitely take some time and show some people, how we use them. Or how
I ordered a set for university.
Oh, perfect. Cool. Perfect.
So we're going to start messing with them.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. And again, like, we're not changing our beliefs or we're not changing our philosophies. All we're doing is introducing a different method to give people something that's new and exciting and cool, and it's fun.
Staying on the same path.
Well, I think you hit on a really cool point, Marco, and that is that, our principles stay the same, but methods will change over time, but you're getting the same result, and being open to different methods and different tools to accomplish those same principles that we know and love.
Right. Love that. Nick, what were you saying, buddy?
Oh, nothing. It just basically you're just making it more fun. Like it changes it a little bit, but it's mainly just giving them some variety.
Right. That's it.
So I had this is going off subject, but I had a good question for you. So we're having some changes in the company right now. We're growing massively. And so there's opportunities all over the place. But I think this isn't just with our corporation with Bossa Fitness. It kind of seems nowadays, and this is, I don't know if it's because I'm old and this has always been happening, but it seems like young coaches now kind of get into it and they want to be like, I want to write a book. I want to speak and Perform Better. I want to be a top level coach. I want to be the next Dan John. And they haven't even trained for a year yet.
Yeah. I want to be the next Dan John too.
You kind of go over like the importance of being in the trenches and having a journey before you even get there.
Yeah.
You've been training at Boyle since 2009, right? Not when you went into your internship.
Right. And I mean, I just got my first Perform Better gig, and not saying that is like a, requirement. Like you got to go 10 years before Perform Better is going to make you an offer or something like that. But I think that, like you said, sorry for any young coaches out there, but at least what's trending over here, at least in the Northeast, is that younger coaches want to work less and have more. Like it seems like just in a short period of time, like the 7 to 10 years that I've been in this industry, people who are coming in are less interested in working hard. They're less interested in getting up early. They're less interested in staying late. And unfortunately, I try to hammer those things home to our interns, and only a handful of them often receive the message, and I don't know if that's a generational thing. I don't know if that's an internet thing, an Instagram thing. I don't know what's changing in society, but I definitely think that we see people trending more towards, trying to be armchair experts or not wanting to spend time in the trenches coaching. But in actuality, if you don't have that experience, if you don't have those 10,000 hours, or you don't have those coaching experiences from like teaching an 11-year-old kid how to do a hang clean, and then also teaching like a 75-year-old woman how to do a split squat, like assisted with the TRX. It's just going to take a lot longer for you to be able to be adaptable and think on your feet and come up with the right solution at the right time. Like now, not to say, not that I don't have more to learn. There's always more to learn, but coaching is very easy for me now, in a sense that like I can look at certain things and if I don't like it, I immediately know what the solution is. And if that solution doesn't work, I immediately know what the next solution is, right? It's sort of like the John Wooden approach. When John Wooden always says, he used to say to his players, I want you guys always thinking about what is the next best move. And if you don't have that time in the trenches, you don't get those hours in, it becomes much harder to figure out what the next best move is off the top of your head. So for me, it's very, very quick. And I credit it all to the fact that I've watched probably 500,000 rear foot elevated split squat reps in my career. I've watched 500,000 hang cleans. I've seen all those things so many times that it makes the next best move very easy to find. And I think that if you don't have that process, if you try to skip that step, one of two things is going to happen to you. Number one, you're going to end up in a situation where you think you're ready for something and you're really not. Or number two, you're going to be in a situation where people are going to just think you're a fraud. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. If you don't have a rapport and a resume of lengthy coaching, of being in the trenches, and you try to sell bullshit, people are going to call you on it. People are going to know that you haven't done that. And so I really think that that's sort of where it's the most important part, to really get those hours in and spend that time coaching and reading the old stuff. Like the stuff that I read 10 years ago, I still recommend to our interns now. How to Win Friends and Influence People, Mike's book, Dan's books, Taking the FMS, like all those things. Like, yeah, they were cool 10 years ago. They were also cool 20 years ago. Like, you need to keep going with those things. There's a reason why those people are all having a lot of success. And I'll admit, over the course of my career, and more now, I would say in the last 3 to 4 years than ever before, when I was a younger coach, never really fighting, but oftentimes being like, I don't know why Mike does it this way. Why does Mike do this? Why does Mike do that? Why does Mike think this is a good idea? I don't agree with that. And really over the last 3 or 4 years have I been more and more like, yep, there we go. Mike was right about that. Mike was right about that one too. Oh, sure enough, Mike told me that like 3 years ago. I wish I had just listened to him the first time he said it, and so it goes full circle, and you realize there's a reason people who have been doing it for a very, very long time are very, very successful. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to have that experience where maybe you think you know better for a little while about certain things, and then maybe you learn that you were wrong about certain things. And I think that's okay. But I definitely think you have to have those hours. You have to be in the trenches, like you said, or else you're just going to be, it's just not going to work long term for you. You'll be out of training quickly.
I thought it was funny, like how you just brought that up. Brendan talked about that when he moved out to Cali. And he's like, I kind of just thought everything that Boyle did to a point, right? Like he kind of going to get some of it. And he's like, and I realized he was right pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, like he said, like,
done that path before you.
Right. And like Brendan said, like some things I figured out much quicker, and other things took many, many years for me to kind of be like, oh, geez, Mike was right about this. I'm like, the older I get, the more I feel like he's like my dad, like who was like, I told you not to do this when you were younger, dummy. And then you're like, yeah, my dad was right about that one. And sure enough, he was right about that one also, And I feel like I have more and more of those popping up in my life as of the last couple of years, which is all great. I mean, it just means, like I said, you're still learning, you're still getting better. So just what you're learning about changes slightly, Well,
I love what you're saying about essentially to these young coaches, to have success, like you really got to fall in love with the process. You got to fall in love with the reps.
Yeah.
And if you're just like, you get into coaching and 2 months in, you're already looking to that next thing. like, oh, I got to be here tomorrow. It's like, dude, just fall in love with coaching itself.
Right.
And the good stuff's going to happen. It'll be a byproduct of just loving coaching and mastering your craft. I think if more people look at that way, they get to the success they want a lot faster anyway.
Right. And to be quite honest, like, I think people need to also sit down and take a long, hard look at how they define success, right? Because, like, yeah, there's like this big, there's this sexy appeal to, like you said, like writing a book or teaching for Perform Better or being the next Dan John, right? And all those things are great. And those things can be lucrative also. But you also have to think about, like, what defines success for you. Like, for me, the best part of my day every day isn't when I'm like, oh, I taught for Perform Better today and they paid me X dollars. What a great day. So successful. Like, it's more or less when I go home and I'm like, yeah, like, I continue to help make the lives of all these people who I care about much better, right? Like, so you have to really think about why you're into coaching. Like, are you into coaching because you want 10,000 Instagram followers and you want to write a book and teach for Perform Better? Or are you in coaching because you want to help people? And if you really want to help people, you're going to have success. Eventually, it'll come if you get the reps in. But if you really just want to be, popular, it's not a good place to start. So,
your boy Cody wants to ask you a question.
No, Cody can't ask any questions. He's not allowed to. I can't see him. Is there a way to see everybody?
Yeah, you can swipe over.
Oh, all right. I see. How about this? Oh, there's a lot of people on here. Micah, what up, kid? All right, Cody, where are you at? There you are. Oh, sleeveless, of course.
How's it going?
What's up?
Yeah, sorry.
What's up, buddy?
So, I liked what you said about, how you doing? You hear me?
I'm great, man.
Sorry,
I'm
my
great.
gym is.
I can. Yeah, I can hear you great.
My gym has bad reception. Perfect. No, I like what you said. I mean, I remember reading an article by Alan Cosgrove and Eric Cressy talking about your, getting those hours in, like you have to be in the trenches. My biggest thing is, like, we've been, we had Brett Bartholomew come talk to us last month at our summit. And I've been thinking, like, with you and in your groups when you train at MBSC, kind of what's your thought process, at each group? Like, what are you trying? Of course, you have what you want to try to accomplish, but, with your certain clients or your individual clients that you've learned how they move, what's kind of your thought process? Like, hey, how can I help this person get better? Or,
well, I think
along those lines.
I think, like we said, like,
your philosophy in your certain groups that you train.
So understanding the recipe first is the most important part. And I think we, collectively, we, not MBSC, collectively, we, everybody on this call, collectively, MBSC, VASA, the sort of circle we roll with, the Perform Betters, the Dan Johns, the Brett Bartholomews. I think collectively, we are all a group of people who understand the recipe, right? We know it's split squats and push-ups and inverted rows and interval training, right? We know that it's not Russian twists and burpees and CrossFit. Like, I think as a group, we collectively understand the recipe. I think what happens then is your assessment becomes more about what is this person's long-term goal? Like, what is the long-term goal? Is the long-term goal, like, for an adult, for me, almost all my long-term goals for my adults who don't need to lose weight is just, for how long can I improve their orthopedic age? For how long can I keep their joints feeling 40 into their 60s, right? But thinking about, like, a high-level athlete is very, very different. Like, how quickly can I get this guy from a 1.1 flying 10 to a 1.05 or whatever that might be. So, and then it becomes a psychological game. So a lot of what I've done recently, and I can share these with Nick after so he can share them with all of you guys, is, like, I've been reading a lot of books about not just how the brain works, but different psychological approaches that you can take with people. And I feel like this is actually, like, the perfect timing for me to kind of go into the story of literally what I had to do this morning, right before I came onto this call, which was why I was like a minute or two late, is because I have the group of, college hockey guys who are all Division I, playing junior somewhere. Some of them are already signed to NHL contracts. And I had to have a conversation with them this morning about the recipe, right? Because it started yesterday when we're going on plus sets on bench, and it was 5+, and one of my guys got like 225 for 7, and he finishes the 7th rep, and it barely got it. And so I'm yelling at the spotter to rack it. I'm yelling at him to rack it, and they just completely ignore me and go for an 8th rep, to which he obviously gets pinned and gets crushed, right? It's fine. Spotter just lifted up. He's fine. Nobody's hurt or anything. But I said to him, I go, listen, dude, if I wanted to be a rep counter for you, I could just work at the YMCA, right? So there's a reason, there's a physiological difference between you stopping after the 7th rep that you got and you going for an 8th rep and failing. What happens to your body physiologically on the inside is different than you finishing a rep versus you failing a rep. I said, I'm not here to just tell you when to stop. There's a reason why I'm telling you to stop. There's a scientific reason behind why we do everything. And so I was like, if you think you know better, just go do it yourself. Don't ask me how much weight to use. Don't ask me what should I do for conditioning today when I tell you to run 3 150s and you say, oh, well, I really want to run 5. That's not enough. Then don't ask me. If you know the recipe, then do it yourself. So I kind of just left them on the floor. They were all kind of pissed at me, like jaws open. But I was like, I'm sick of it, right? When I tell you to do something, there's a reason. It's because I'm the professional. I'm the expert at this, not you. I've been doing this for 10 years, learning from the guy who's been doing it for 35 years. If you don't have success when you get to school and testing starts, or when you get to the NHL and testing starts, don't blame us because you didn't listen to me, right? So then today I go out there after telling him, listen, I want you to just do 14 tempo runs up and back. I come out and the kid is running 150s. I go, what are you running 150s for? He goes, well, I didn't really feel like it was enough. I go, you trained yesterday, you skated twice. You told me both quads hurt, like you feel like they're going to tear. And I come out here and you're running 150s. So at that point, there's so much psychological stuff that goes into how you communicate with different people that's sort of where my focus is now. Because I feel like I've got the meat and potatoes of training. I don't think we're going to learn much more about training. We're not going to learn much more about exercise. We're not going to learn too many new exercises, right? But then I think it becomes a matter of how you can improve your coaching, which is one thing that I'm sure Brett was like awesome for you guys and probably what he harped on a lot. And then also how you can communicate and, how you can manage this psychological warfare that is training somebody, particularly somebody who is either has anxiety about their training or has anxiety about their sports performance or has anxiety surrounding injury. That's sort of the next thing, I feel like, and that's sort of where I am now.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
of course,
that.
man. Yeah. Oh, I'll send Nick the titles to some of those books and things that I've been reading, and he can I feel like what I wanted to do first was learn how the brain worked a bit in terms of influencing people's decisions. So that's sort of where I started with brain plasticity and neuroplasticity and how that all works. And then I went into the more like personal psychological warfare surrounding communicating with people. So I'll send all those book titles over to you, Nick.
Awesome.
Cool.
I don't want to keep you. I'm going to ask you one more question if you don't mind.
That's cool. Hey, I have until 11 o'clock, so you can.
Oh, awesome. Let's just keep talking till 11.
I blocked off a whole hour, so whatever you need, buddy.
Oh, I thought you meant my time. Then you'd be here for a while.
No, I got another half hour still.
So
what's up?
I mean, this one wasn't even on my notes, but I appreciate the hell out of you guys. Like you, Kevin, Brendan, like you're always willing to give, but you also learn off of each other, right? You guys have a good mastermind group. I'm sure like just the Boils in general, you guys learn off of the coaches. And even me, like Dane and Lang, like we've been friends for a while and we learn off of each other. We find something, we start talking about it. Can you kind of like go about like the importance of having that mastermind group within like your community of coaches that makes you just better?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is probably one of the most, it's probably one of the most, I don't know how to talk right now. it is very, very, it has been a very big part of our success here. You know, like coach reads something, finds something interesting, you just share it with everybody, like via email, or like, you know, sometimes I'll print out a research study. Kevin and I will go through it in our office, and then when I'm done with it, I'll literally, these are the notes I always leave, and people know that it's me. I'll take a research study, I'll slap it on the table in the staff room, and I'll just put a sticky note on it that says, read this, get better, right? Because just me saying like, hey, it just, even if you don't agree with it, or even if you're like, this is stupid, or I don't, you know what I mean? And then read it so that you come to that conclusion. Like read it and come to the conclusion that you think this is a bad idea or that you wouldn't do it, right? But nobody ever read anything. I always like the Billy Madison quote, like nobody ever read anything and is like, I'm now dumber because I read this, right? And Billy Madison was like, everyone in the room is now dumber for having listened to you. I don't think anybody ever walked away from any situation like that where they tried to get new information and we're like, oh, well, now I'm more dumb, right? So I always try to, we as a group collectively always try to share as much information with each other as possible. And I think it's crucial because you end up finding things that, you know, maybe didn't interest you before, or that you had no idea existed, or, you know, like Kev's my go-to guy when I want to talk about or learn more about like conditioning, right? Like Kev is really has a strong understanding of managing heart rate systems and how to condition people the right way. And he's done a lot of work and studying around that. So oftentimes it's just easier for me to like be like, hey, you know, what do I do with this? Or how do I approach this situation? Because I think one of the things that like Gary Vaynerchuk says often too that I love is like, prioritize the things that you're good at and outsource the things that you suck at. So if there's something that I'm not very good at, but I know I have somebody who is really good at it, I'm not going to be ego driven around the situation. I'm just going to be like, hey, let me go ask Kev because he's got a better answer for me. Or, you know, I'm treating this client and I can't seem to figure out this ankle thing. I'll tell them straight up. I'll be like, hey, you know, I'm going to email my friend Charlie Weingroff and see what he thinks about this because he's a really smart guy and I've learned a lot from him. So let's see if he can help us. I think one of the things in this industry is that people are so afraid of admitting when it's easier to admit when you don't know an answer to make a mistake and be wrong, right? It's harder to backtrack and be like, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, you know, and then it is to say, I don't really know what to do right here. Let me go ask somebody who does know or who might know. I think one of the things that we always say to our interns that's super important is I never want to hear an intern say the words, I thought. Because if an intern says, I thought, that means they made a decision that they probably weren't qualified to make and that they made a mistake. I always tell them, it's easier for you to just come to me and say, what do I do in this situation? I'm not going to be like, you're an idiot. How do you not know what to do in this situation? What I'm going to do is say, this is what I want you to do. Thanks for coming to ask me and not for making a mistake by trying to think you know the answer. So I think that's something that's really, really important. We all always try to avoid the I thought situation.
That's awesome. I love that. It's like basically like we were talking about earlier, it's somebody got to that knowledge before you. Mm-hmm. You just need to use it as a community and not just put it on yourself and just kind of like use others to see how you can better yourself, right? Ask questions before you just guess.
Right. Sorry, I have to plug in my phone here.
Good.
There we go. My
All
phone
right, I won't take up too much more of your time, but you're coming down September, right?
Maybe on August, baby. Maybe next month.
Oh, and in August too. I haven't announced yet the Strength Through Knowledge in September, but you're coming down to talk with Mark Fisher and Dan John that time too.
Dude,
right?
Honestly, those are like two of my heroes. So for me to like it was kind of so funny. It's like Brendan said something. He was like, oh, like it would have been cool if they had switched you and Brett, and then you, Kevin, and I could have gone and talked together, and then Brett, Mark, and Dan could have talked together. And I was like, I don't want to talk with you guys. I always talk with you guys. I want to talk with Dan and Mark. Like for me, that's huge because those two guys are two of my heroes, Dan especially, that I'm like hyper focused on my preparation for this because I know Dan, he's going to like sit in the front row and he's going to do this thing at me and he's going to be all hilarious. And so I need to make sure that I knock his socks off, because he in particular has been so influential for me in my career, probably, second only to Mike, in terms of someone who's influenced me as a coach, as a person, as a everything, as a friend, as a husband. Dan has just been so influential for me in so many different ways. And I don't know if he really knows that, but for me to speak at the same thing with him, and also Mark, who I have so much respect for, is huge to me. Huge, huge, huge. I'm so glad Kevin and Brendan won't be there.
So glad Brendan and Kevin won't be there. Well, I'm excited to have you come down. All right, cool.
Yeah, man.
Go. Thank you for hopping on. What time is it over there anyway? What time did you get on?
Dude, it's 10:40. If anybody has any more questions, I can kick it for a little bit. So, but if not, we can cut it off.
Well, if Cody's still on the call, I bet he has 15 other questions for you. So
Cody and I are gonna FaceTime after this. So
You would, Nick.
actually, no, we're not,
You
because
just jealous.
Cody doesn't have an iPhone. He's one of those people.
I am.
I can hear someone. Oh. All right. Whoa.
I'll leave it
scroll
open
through
for
here.
questions. But if anybody's got another question, go ahead and hop her off mute and ask Marco. He's going to give us his time. I'm going to steal it.
Oh, don't worry. I'm gonna invoice you after this. No, I'm just kidding. What's up, Summer?
Hi. Sorry, I was actually working out for most of that, but I do have a question.
What's up?
I'm constantly getting more and more people that come to me and they're like, fix my knee. So what are just like, especially I've gotten a lot of, so I had a meniscus tear a couple years ago. And because of that, I think like the other people have been like, oh, Summer can fix meniscus things, or like MCL things or stuff like that. And I was just wondering if you had any advice for like, and of course, like I'm not getting people who haven't been through PT or who haven't, been cleared by a doctor, but like, what would your advice be to helping people like that?
Sure. Awesome. I love that. Okay. So let's think about the joint by joint approach, right? So if we think from the ground up, people who have had a history of knee issues are going to suffer probably from some sort of patellar tendon pathology, right? So the first thing I would do is make sure that I hammer ankle mobility drills, and also viewing the hip as a knee stabilizer, making sure that I prioritize hip dominant stuff like single leg deadlifts. And then in terms of single leg deadlifts, like shoulders elevated, bench hip lift, all the things that are going to really, really hammer hip stability as it serves as a supporter of the knee. And then thinking about like restructuring or retraining quad tissue or tendon tissue, people who are maybe symptomatic or still suffer from some intermittent knee pain, I would just start by having all of my knee dominant exercises, like whether they were split squats or single leg squats, eccentric or isometric first, just to sort of recondition that tissue and the tendons of the knee. So like, for example, like I have a woman who like blew out her knee so badly so many years ago that it has significantly less flexion than the other one. So we do so much hip dominant stuff, but then she does a lot of like split squat holds and eccentric single leg squats. And those are all the sort of things that are going to help to recondition and retrain the quad to support the knee. And then obviously if you keep the ankle mobile and keep the hip stable, those things are all going to be mucho
Awesome.
good. Cool.
And then one more question from me. You were saying that like you've really been focusing on like the mindset of people.
Yeah.
So that's actually part of the things that I've been noticing with people with like old injuries, that although they don't have like physiological injuries anymore, they still can't get over certain movements or anything like that. What are things that you've learned to like break down walls of just like people saying I can't?
Yeah, I know. That's That's one of the toughest things. And like, I'll give you a quick example. Like, we had a woman who had chronic knee pain, but physiologically there was nothing wrong. She'd been cleared via MRI, cleared via X-ray. Like, you know, there was literally nothing wrong. And so she had this, like, I can't do lunges. I can't do lunges. Lunges hurt my knees. And so I was like, all right. And Kevin one day was like, let's do some get-ups. So she's doing full get-ups. And Kevin's like, how's that feel? She's like, it feels great. So one thing you can do is you can try to trick them, right?
Okay.
Or the right, which is fine. Or the second thing you can do is I always tell people, like, if it's something that they have a fear of, just start with one set. Be like, hey, let's try to do one set of split squats today and see how it goes, right? And then when they see that their knee doesn't explode the next day and that they're okay, then you could try to start to sequence a little bit more into it, right? I just try to explain to them the idea of positive stress adaptation, right? Telling people, like, what we need to do is we need to find that fine line where we create a little bit of stress and you have a positive adaptation, and then eventually, and then you're stronger, and then we can do it again, and then we can do it again, and then we can do it again. So I think if you kind of tell people that, if you kind of baby them through those steps that way, that they sort of get this sensation of feeling very safe and secure with something that they might be afraid of. And also, like, just assuring people that, you know, that reminding people that your number one job is, as a coach, is to prevent them from receiving or having any harm done to them during the training session, right? Just being like, listen, my number one job here is to protect you from exercise that you're not ready for. And I think that we are ready for this, and I know that you're afraid, and I know it's tough, and I know it might be a little scary. So let's just try it one time today. Let's see how it goes. And if you feel anything or you have anything that negative, we won't do it, or we'll take a step back, or we'll regress it slightly. But it's always easier to err on the side of caution and say, like, hey, let's try this split squat one time. Even though you know in your head they could do 3, it's always easier to tell people, hey, like, that was really good. I think next week we can try 2 sets now. And then it gives people, you know, a little bit of something to celebrate. It gives them a mini celebration every time they come in, you know. Last week I did 5. This week I did 8, you know, or whatever it might be. So I hope that helps.
Oh, that helps a lot. That helps a lot.
Cool.
And then, sorry, if anybody else wants to talk, please just cut me off because I always have questions. But so you were also talking about, so like on the other side of that, the people who are going too much too fast.
Yeah.
What is the psychological? So you were talking about that the bench press, and that she failed on one. What is that difference within the body?
In terms of like a physiological response?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you train to failure all the time, like we know just from, you know, talking about hydrogen ion development during muscle contraction, we know that if you flood the tissue with too much hydrogen ion, that it's going to possibly have a negative stress adaptation. We also know, like, from studies as early as the 70s, like Russian studies that Pavel brought to the United States, like talking about how, you know, staying in your 50 to 70% all the time is going to be what yields your long-term strength results. We just know that, and you know, I can't give you all of the physiological reasons why, but we do know that if you just went in and you were like, oh, I'm going to bench as much weight as I can every week when I bench, you know, I'm going to bench to failure, that you know, it's not going to help you get stronger. You know, you'll definitely have changes in your body composition for sure. If you take somebody who's not lifting weights and then all of a sudden you have them start lifting weights and they're going to failure all the time, they're going to get better. It's just not the best road to take, right? And also, like, it kind of sucks when you miss reps. I always tell people that too. I'm like, don't you feel incomplete when you miss a rep? Like, I feel like the only time it's appropriate to miss a rep is when you're testing. Like me personally, like I'll never pick up like a kettlebell to press it overhead 8 times if I think I can only get 5. Like, what's the point of that? I'd just be like, well, I suck. I just missed 3, you know? So I think that's really important to think about. Like, you know, your training isn't a competition against yourself, right? Your training is your training is a way for you to make yourself better and make yourself healthier, not to fail at certain things. And again, if you have to test or you want to test from time to time, that's fine and that's appropriate, but it's a practice, right? When you train, you're practicing movement and you're practicing strength. Those are skills, which is why I try to get people away from the term working out. Like, anybody can do a workout. Anybody can make anybody tired, but it takes somebody smart to train somebody and make them better, right? So I think that that's one thing that's really, really important to remember, is that you're practicing movement, you're practicing being strong, and that if you step in there every day and go till you collapse, I don't know, it's just, one, it sounds miserable, and two, eventually you're going to run out of steam. You're just going to kill your nervous system. And whether you see it in the weight room or not, like, maybe you're that person who, gets a common cold and it lasts 2.5 weeks and you don't understand why. It's like, well, maybe if you didn't beat your nervous system to death every time you walked into the gym 5 days a week, then you could recover from the common cold faster or something like that, So
you're working on mastering more than just beating yourself up every single time you go into the gym.
Dude, anybody can do that. Any idiot can do that, honestly. So people got to grow up. It's the internet, I'll tell you. It's Instagram, though. The problem is Instagram, and it's not due to lack of information. It's due to filter failure, right? Oh, this guy has a six-pack and he does burpees and slams sledgehammers into tires. He must be a great coach. He must know what to do. It's like, yeah, he must also probably take drugs. He must probably also train for 3 hours a day. He must probably also be like really strict about his nutrition. So before you go and give him $500 a month for online programming just because he looks cool on Instagram, like, think about what you're doing for a minute, And I think that's the problem. The problem isn't lack of information. The good information is out there, but like for example, like the videos on Movement is Medicine's Instagram that Kevin and I post are not nearly as cool as some of like the Instagram posts that you see from some of these, Instagram models, right? They don't look as cool. They're not as sexy. We don't have 1 million followers, but that's like the information that needs to be filtered up to the top. So I think we need to get people to follow less Instagram and more good coaches.
It's not cool, though, if you're not laying in a puddle of your own sweat and blood. Come on.
I know. Hey.
It's all about that pick at the end, guys.
Don't leave pee out of that either. You should go to the point where you pee yourself.
Yes, every time without failure.
Reps to pee.
All right,
that's
Mark,
what I call it.
I'll let you go because I know you're getting closer to your time, and I want you to be able to be prepped for your next. But thanks for staying on longer too and answering some of the questions for us.
My pleasure.
I hope you are out in August. I have a feeling like we're going to have a lot of people signing up for level 2, so you'll be out here.
Ugh, I have a love-hate relationship with this. It's like, it's literally written right here, like on my sticky note on my computer. It says like Vasa 8485 ? And me just being like, am I going to Vasa? So we'll see what happens.
The people that are on the call right here, like, come to action, come to level 2.
Well, what's funny? What's funny is Brendan and I were talking yesterday. He's like, can you go to Colorado July 21st? And I was like, is it only a level 1? He's like, yeah. I was like, no, I'm not going. If I'm going to go out there, I need 2 days of Vasa people. I'm not doing the quick turnaround. So if we can get, if we can get like 7 to 10 more people for that level 2, then I'll come out next month.
I think we'll have it.
Everybody all right, cool.
Signs up last minute, so we'll have it.
All right,
cool.
Well,
hopefully
keep me posted.
Next month, but thanks for hopping on the call. I'll send this to you after. Yeah, if you could send me some of those notes you talked about too, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to run out there and coach now, but I will at some point today.
Cool. Thanks, Marco. Appreciate it.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you guys soon. See ya.